or in relation to God. When it comes to doing things like, God, I don't understand why my business is not more successful. Why is my business not more successful? You need to make more phone calls, Chris, or Bob or Jim or Janie. You need to make more phone calls, or you need to increase your sales. You need to stop spending so much time on Facebook. You need to change the way that you're doing your marketing. You have all the materials. Those are all here. But when it comes to things like you said, the death and the hurricanes and those things that we can't control, that's when the prayers are offered. That's when the prayers are lifted up. Now, to segue into that, because I know what your next statement would be, was, well, lots of people were praying before the hurricane showed up. Lots of people in Florida and in Texas. I don't understand. Why would God do this? What about all these people that prayed? Why did they not get what they asked for? Well, first things first, do we always give our children everything they ask for? Everything. Do we give them most of what they ask for? Yeah. We give them everything they need. Interesting. I don't think a person here has gone a day without eating, unless it's by choice. Now, maybe some of you might have. I don't know. But I know I've never gone a day without eating, not unless it was my own choice, nor my children, nor my wife. I've had food. I've had my eyesight. I've had my health. I've had everything that I needed. Now, the things I want, I don't have. So all those things were provided to me. Now, I could trade all those things. I could trade those things for some extra time here or something like that. But, where I didn't have the eyesight, I didn't have my health, I didn't have all those things, but maybe I didn't have as much time. But I guess the point is, even Jesus asked God for something. Jesus asked God, in the Garden of Gethsemane, can you please let this cup pass from me? And that was a prayer that was declined. It was answered, but it was answered with a no. Why? Because it had to be done for the greater good. Why kill a man who has done absolutely nothing wrong? That would seem barbaric and insane. But there was a purpose for it. And it was for you who are not worthy, and it was for me who is not worthy. And lastly, justice doesn't seem to be served a lot of the time. I think you said that. That came from your advocacy, your devil's advocate voice there. Justice doesn't seem to be served a lot of the time. Like I posed last time, when there's an employee who does something worthy of being reprimanded, your boss doesn't, gather everybody together in one room and then discipline them. He calls the employee into his office and he deals with them accordingly. We don't know how these people are being punished or when or in what way, but rest assured their day is coming. Just because your neighbor has the financially successful business, the trophy wife or the clout, and they've all attained it, through these ill-gotten ways, and we beat ourselves up over it because we just know, not think, we just know that they have a better life than us. But what we don't see behind the scenes, the wife is unfaithful, the business is under investigation, the clout is superficial, people are laughing behind the person's back. We don't know. We think we know what we're talking about. As a teenager, we think we know more than mom and dad. Mom and dad, you've been teens before, but you haven't been 17 like I've been 17. You haven't been 15 like I've been 15. You haven't been 8 like I've been 8. They have, and they have all this wisdom and knowledge that surpasses our own understanding. But we don't. We're superficial. We're fallible because we're humans. So of course, there's going to be mistakes in us. But they have all this knowledge that surpasses what we have. And we think we know what we're talking about. We think we're so much smarter. And the same thing I believe in our relations with God. I've had those thoughts too. God, come on, I'm smarter than all this. And then you just take a look outside. You look at the trees. You look at the seed that can plant this mighty oak tree. I can't push that thing down with a daggum bulldozer barely. It's got to be a certain type, if you want to get this thing down. But we look at the trees that provide oxygen, and we provide what they need, and everything, the fruit and the vegetables and the things that are made for us. Funny how the synthetic things are the things that hurt us the most, but the natural things are the things that help us the most. And the water and everything here that's made good for us. And we didn't create not one of them. Our eyes, our nose, your hair. You can't control anything. You can't even hold your breath and kill yourself because you'll pass out. Your body automatically takes over. You have to use an object that was made from the earth that we did not create in order to kill yourself. You can't even do it with your own hand. But yet we want to blame God. Anyway, there we go.
I hear what you're saying. So what I'm hearing you say is that, first of all, we have to recognize the sovereignty of God. And we have to assume that because of his infinite wisdom, that he looks to the greater good. And that in our answers to our prayers, that the answer may be, in fact, no at times. And even though he may not answer us in the time, place, or in the way that we would like for him to answer, justice is being served one way or another. And I think it's interesting that both of you gentlemen have talked about it in the context of this. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and play this advocate again. It's interesting that you both have cited circumstances under which you cannot apply success or failure. It's sort of like this. If you look at a circumstance and say a tightrope walker. So if the tightrope walker says, hey, I'm going to go across the Grand Canyon and I'm going to get on this tightrope and I'm going to walk across the Grand Canyon. And when you see a tightrope walker go across the Grand Canyon with their pole, you'll be pretty amazed. You'll say, wow, that guy is able to go across and do some pretty great stuff. However, if that same tightrope walker said, hey, why don't you get on my shoulders and I'll carry you across on my shoulders, walking across the tightrope on the Grand Canyon, across the Grand Canyon. Fewer people would decide to put their life in the hands of that individual, even if they demonstrated that they were able to walk across, and you might have had faith that they could do it. Sometimes I believe that we oftentimes have to look at God in the second way, which is we have to say, well, it's not just so much that he can do something like walk across the Grand Canyon on a tightrope. We have to believe that we have to get on his shoulders while doing it. And I think that a lot of times when we look at the issue of faith, that's faith. Faith isn't being aware that God can do something. It's hoping that he will do something. But here's the thing that I think is very ironic about that same notion. If that tightrope walker falls with you on his shoulders because of a strong wind or a inhospitable circumstance, and you fall, what's interesting is, unlike with a tightrope walker who didn't have the skill set, or because they made a mistake in footing or something and they dropped both you and themselves to their death, when it comes to God, what's interesting is that the people who were standing on the sidelines who didn't see it that way, they would say, well, the circumstances were this, or God in his infinite wisdom felt it was better to let them fall, or he decided to let them fall for their own good because they were going to leave anyway. They were going to have to die at some point. Why not die on the tightrope? And the thing that's amazing to me is that oftentimes we spend most of our time justifying some things that are unjustifiable. We tend to watch things that are terrible happening to people, and we say, you know what? That's not God. That's the devil. So we created another invisible man in the sky who enters bad people and causes them to do bad. But what I think is more telling, and one of the pragmatic approaches that I've taken, is this. I don't believe that God alone makes all the decisions. I think there's some pretty bad people who make some pretty bad decisions. I think God allows those bad people to make bad decisions. He certainly let Pharaoh make them. He certainly allowed his people to be tortured. He allowed his people to go through plagues, plague after plague after plague. He certainly didn't make any exception until the very end for them. It might have been for his glory that they were ultimately liberated, but at what cost? And the question is, are we as believers, if we choose to believe in this mystery, invisible man in the sky or entity in the sky, whichever one, the lower one, the dark one, or the spirit God, if we choose to believe in either of these entities, if we choose to, the question then becomes, does it prohibit suffering? Does it prohibit any of the things that we would go through in life anyway? And my answer to that is unlikely. But what it does change is our perspective. And if we have an eternal perspective, sometimes we have to look beyond the current circumstance and say, you know what? I do believe good overpowers and trumps evil. I do believe that. I do believe that at some point, good will win. I do believe that because I think that's the just way. And I think we hold on to that notion. It may not be borne out in our own lifetime. It might not be in the way or under the circumstances that we would like for it to happen. But sometimes we just have to accept by faith that good will win. Now, if you're not a believer in the Bible, if you're not a believer in the mystery man in the sky, or if you're not in the spiritual realm where you have some kind of ethereal experience where some Holy Spirit comes down and inundates you with wisdom, the common man at some point has to sit down and say to himself with a gut check, am I good because I expect a reward? Am I good because I choose to walk this way because I hope that I will have a good reward? Or am I choosing to allow myself to be changed into something greater by something that is greater than me? And I think that each man has to make a decision at some point in his life about how to be significant in light of the fact that things good and bad may enter into your life. But it is how we choose to exercise our faith in those times of adversity. Exercise our faith in people, exercise our faith in a omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent God. We have to sometimes take a step back and say, there is something greater than myself that I can trust with my life. Whether he drops me off the edge of a cliff or not, whether he allows circumstances to create trouble in my life, I believe at the end of it, he's got my best interest at heart. You have to accept that by faith. There is no fact necessarily to support it, except if you believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And it is literally that one act that gives you the hope that good trumps evil. And I think that if you don't look at your life in the context of a relationship with Jesus Christ, who did walk amongst men, who did die, who was sinless, and was willing to sacrifice all for you, it is at that point that you realize that your faith is warranted because there is someone who actually cares. This has been Conversations from the Cave. I'm your host, Kirk Kennedy. Until next time, love one another.
Conversations from the Cave is brought to you by the Alabama Cornea Care Center, Northern Alabama's first irregular cornea, keratoconus, and scleral lens referral center, specializing in the management of degenerative cornea disease and complications resulting from refractive surgery. For more information, you may visit them on the web at alabamacorneacare.com. The Alabama Cornea Care Center, helping patients see the light of the world. Conversations from the Cave is a production of the Provox Media Group. For more information or to share your questions or comments, visit our podcast Facebook page by searching Conversations from the Cave. The views expressed on this program are the personal beliefs of the panelists and do not necessarily represent the beliefs of the Provox Media Group or its sponsors. Join us next time for more real talk from real men. Conversations from the Cave.